In life, we rarely ever see or meet a truly kind and honest person. I'm lucky to have Edgar Willer was brought into the world on January 18, 1926. His parents, Emma and William Willer, adored his blonde hair and deep blue ocean eyes. Being born in Tama County on the Indian Reserve in Iowa created quite the life for Edgar, although he only spent the first 8 years of his life there. His parents were busy with many different responsibilities. Edgar's father was a loyal government worker, assigned to the reservation to help with relations and supplies, while Emma was helping the women of the reservation. The chief on the reservation not only looked after Edgar and his older brother Mark, who was 2.5 years older at the time, and then later took care of his younger sister Mariana, whom is 5 years younger than Edgar. Along with those three, he also looked after the rest of the children on the reservation while their parents were busy. Both of Edgar's parents were farmers who believed in raising responsible children. Because of this, everyone had to do chores, even at 3 to 4 years old. He and his family lived in an old farmhouse on the reservation. He says his most memorable times he had with his family were when they went to the Iowa State Fair or went out together on Saturday night. On birthdays, his mother would usually make cakes. Edgar loved State Fair. He said that at the time, most people didn't have big campers to sleep in, so he and his family slept on the ground and tried to cover up with the blankets they brought along. When Edgar was around the age of 4, his dad wanted to start farming. The family found a few miles of land on the eastern part of the reservation. Edgar remembers the landlord having a really nice car. When the landlord came to their house to finalize the sale, Mark and Edgar immediately noticed the car. The landlord promised a nickel to each boy if they didn't touch the car, then went inside. The boys waited impatiently, sitting on their hands to keep from touching the car. Finally, the landlord came outside again and gave the boys their nickels. As soon as he went back inside, Edgar and Mark ran their hands across the hood of the car. Edgar strongly disliked the cold, so during the winter he would stand on the porch and watch his siblings and friends play without him. This was evident throughout his life as he tried to avoid cold for the rest of his life. Because he was a mischievous kid, Edgar decided to climb up the chicken house. He fell and broke his arm. His parents rushed him to the doctor's office when the doctor set his arm and put a cast on it, which later came off. The total bill was $8, but his parents couldn't pay for it, so they bartered with eggs and other things from their garden. Edgar's house on the farm was on top of a very steep hill. One afternoon, Edgar remembers running off and rolling down hills, playing in blissful ignorance. No one knew he was gone until after supper. His aunt found him and sent him home. He got in big trouble, and that never happened again. As a child, there were 2 presidents he remembers, John Calvin Coolidge and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. At around the age of 7, Edgar moved to a larger farm in South Tama. There, they attended a rural country school with at most 20 students in all 8 grades, varying from year to year. One afternoon, Edgar saw a skunk dart under the school building. That night, he brought a trap and set it under the school. No one knew about the trap. The next day, he walked out with a skunk and a trap. Edgar's next move was during his freshman year in high school. There were 20 kids in the whole school with 5 freshmen. After his first year, the school closed. He finished high school in Grinnell. In his junior year, Edgar was excused 3 weeks from school to help his dad pick corn on the family farm. Edgar was a shy teenager and says that's why he had so many friends in his sections during school. Throughout all his years of school, Edgar never participated in any extracurriculars. His favorite period was noon hour, which was his lunch hour. He graduated high school in 1944. After graduation, Edgar had a job that he held for 1 week that paid $1 an hour. Then he was called into the service. Edgar served in the military from June 1944 to June 1946. He was trained at Fort Knox, Kentucky. After he was trained, Edgar was stationed in Europe until he was discharged in June of 1946. His main job was driving a Sherman tank on the battlefield. Discharged from the Army, Edgar moved back to the U.S. and entered the workforce. His first job was at a dairy. After a few years, he was offered a job at Farm Services, which he liked. When Farm Services hired a new manager, things got worse, so Edgar got a job as a parts man until he went back to farming. His favorite job was anything farm-related because he loved to farm. His first car was a 1940 Chevrolet that cost about $400. He remembers gas being 30 to 40 cents a gallon when he first started driving. Edgar first noticed his soon-to-be wife at a party his dad threw for him while he was on leave for the Army. They did most of their dating at church activities. They were married on April 17, 1949, which is Easter Sunday. Their first place together was an apartment in Grinnell, Iowa, and the rent was $40 a month. They moved to a different town in 1980, and Edgar got a job at the VA hospital where he worked for 27 years. They bought their first house in 1980 when they moved towns. It cost $58,000 and was money well spent, according to Edgar. For many years, they went square dancing every Saturday night. Edgar and Doris had 4 kids: Dennis, Richard, David, and Sandra. When Sandra was born, Dennis told Richard that they had a baby sister. None of them paid much attention to David. As they all got older, Sandra persuaded the boys to play whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted to play. Edgar and Doris tried to instill in their children the qualities their parents had instilled in them. Along with that came responsibility and honesty. Edgar also tried to teach his children to be kind and respectful of others. He believed that everyone deserved respect no matter the circumstance. The thing Edgar has enjoyed as a grandparent or even a great-grandparent is getting to see and play with his grandkids. He hopes that as his grandchildren grow older, they continue the family tradition of getting everyone together at someone's house twice a year. He also hopes to teach his grandkids to be respectful and help the less fortunate. In his spare time, Edgar makes stained glass and stepping stones. He hopes to teach one of his grandchildren how to make stained glass and hopes that they get into hobbies with more exercise. Edgar is happy when his family comes and gets some well-needed rest and relaxation when they leave. Edgar and Doris have gone to Texas during the winter for 31 years where they did a lot of square dancing. They stopped going to Texas last year because they were old. Edgar and Doris have been married for 70 years. In 2009, Edgar went on a World War II Veterans Honor Flight. He and several other World War II vets left early in the morning and began their flight to Washington, D.C. Once they landed, Edgar's group headed out to see the World War II Memorial and then bust around D.C. for the rest of the day. Edgar Willer is a strong, kind, respectful, and loving man. He has faced every challenge and every situation with grace and poise. I am so glad to have him in my life. He really is a great grandpa.